Alright, I think we're going to have something pretty exciting today. So we're going to do something that I'm sure is on every serious hardcore wheeler's mind. We're going to apply the ultimate Dana 30 turd polish and install some RCVs. Oh yeah! So for all two of you that don't know what an RCV is, it's a CV joint that replaces your U-joint axle shafts. You know, these guys over here, the things that you break probably every other wheeling trip, and replaces that with a chromoly CV joint that's super strong and super awesome, but is also super expensive. But you'll probably never break it ever again. And if you do, it has a warranty with a, pretty sure it's a no questions asked free replacement. Like, they're really good about it. So, the price that you pay is, worth the quality. I'm starting to learn that sometimes you got to pay big bucks if you want to actually have things last. So there's a couple things to think about when changing shafts and upgrading things, especially in axles. Right now, the weak link in this system is the axle shaft U-joint by far. That's the thing that I've broken the most on wheeling trips, and it's easy-ish to replace. You can do it on the trail fairly easy, but it's just annoying, There's times when I'm trying to go up a trail, and I'm just, not even really giving it any beans, and the frickin' U-joint pops. At first, I had regular shafts, and the ears would bend on 35s, and one of the caps actually fell off. I didn't notice it till later in the day. I'm like, hey, there's a cap missing there. So then I went up to the IRO Almost Alloy kit, which is still running on this side. So you can see there's like welded tabs over the U-joint caps. It strengthens the ears and keeps the caps from coming out, and it makes it stronger. But now guess what? It moves the stress point from the ear itself to the U-joint. So later on, some other wheeling trip, I sheared a U-joint straight in half. So great. Super strong U-joints aren't lasting now. So the nice thing with RCVs is it's built to actually be able to withstand more power. Their warranty covers up to 35-inch tires on the website. But there are a few other things to understand about U-joints and, just the principle of wheels in general. So on a U-joint, especially a single U-joint, they don't spin at the same speed. They are actually weaker when you turn the tire. So when they're turning straight, they're the strongest. When you start turning your wheel, the tire itself actually is speeding up and slowing down to accommodate the rotation of the U-joint. It's not smooth. So if we go down to, let's say, our drive shaft, that's what's happening over here. Okay, at the pinion side, there's only one U-joint, and it actually speeds up and slows down. The stiffer the angle, the more of an effect that is. So when it's straight, it's not a problem. That's why you always want your pinion angle to be fairly straight for these double cardons. So now let's move over to the front, which you can't see that side, so I'll show you the back. So here's the back. Here's a double cardon. So this is two U-joints next to each other, and effectively they both cancel out the rotation of the other, so that there is no speed. It is a constant velocity, but it's not a CV joint. So these two together, this double cardon, they cancel each other out, and there's no speeding up or slowing down, which also means no vibrations. So that's why these are usually smoother shafts than just a single on either end. And I can kind of show that to you. So the reason why we're getting into this is just to understand why this is a better technology. Because with a single U-joint, because you have this this difference in speed, first off, that's causing stress. So the tighter your wheels are turned, the more stress there is overall, and that's causing more shock loading. And generally, that is what breaks parts, is shock loading. The static force that they can take is usually pretty high, but when they break, it's because they're getting shock loaded, which is, it's a spike of way too much power, pressure, or force, which breaks them. So we want to try to minimize any amount of shock loading. That's why you don't want wheel hop when you're trying to get up rocks, why you want to take things smooth and stuff like that. Because when you're bouncing around, jumping all over the place, and wheels are spinning and stopping and grabbing and all that, that's when you break shit. So kind of the same situation applies here. So to understand the concept, let's look at some common tools that you may have yourself. So I'm sure you've seen one of these before. This is a standard like swivel socket, and it's got a lot of range. You know, this can turn almost 90 degrees. It can't be used at 90 degrees because it binds up. But that is basically what we could call a U-joint. And then if you've ever seen something like this, this is what's called an impact swivel, and it can turn basically in a free 360. It can't go nearly as tight, but you can spin it all day long. It can take a lot more force, and it's smooth. So that's basically our difference between a U-joint setup and a CV setup. Okay, so this is our terrible axle simulation setup here. So you can see that when the U-joint is straight, we're going to have very smooth torque, but when we start to turn it, it's going to bind more to a point where if you were to go too past what the U-joint is allowed to do, it'll actually stop moving. But generally that's not a problem when it's in the axle. So you can tell that when it's straight, that is going to be when it's strongest and it's not changing speed. But as you start to change the angle, it starts jumping around, and you can see that it's bouncing a lot. That's that change in speed. Something has to give. Either the shaft's got to move or the other end's got to move at a different speed, to the point that like it gets really bad. So U-joints are no bueno for smoothness when turning. So now we have our CV installed over here, and no matter what angle we turn it at, it's always going to have the same amount of you know, angular change or whatever. It's not speeding up and slowing down at all. So this is smooth, and even until it's like at its max, it's smooth. It's a little hard to show because this isn't exactly a bearing setup, but you know, you can turn it any way you want, and it's just fine. So that's one of the key features of the RCV, is that it has smooth power transfer. So you're not worrying about, you know, shock loading it, and you know, especially when you're turned at full lock, that's when a U-joint is at its weakest, when you're binding it. So you can't really give it any gas. You got to be real careful, and nobody really wants that. So with that, you know, you can be turned as hard as you want and give it the same amount of gas, and you know, the shaft itself will be fine. Now, the reason why CVs usually get bad raps, especially in Dana 30s, is because everyone just gets the Grand Cherokee ones. The reason they put CVs in a Grand Cherokee is it's smoother, and that's supposed to be a luxury SUV. So smoother is more luxurious, but they're not meant for, you know, high loads. That's where the RCVs come into play. They're massive, they're huge, and they're meant to take a beating. And the chromoly shafts help too. So now that we have a stronger joint, you want a stronger shaft to go with it, because if you're snapping splines, that's not going to be as fun trying to pick all the pieces out of your diff. So chromoly shaft with a heavy-duty RCV is a pretty good combo. So let's go take a look. If you just so happen to be the lucky person to get in there as soon as possible, you too can find yourself some RCV shafts on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. So this is what $750 gets you. A feeling that you probably overpaid. The dude that had these before me, they were sitting around and were removed in 2012, and I bought them in 2019. Didn't have the bolts, didn't really have anything. I'm surprised the hub's even still attached. Luckily we have the nut and some really shot grease valves. But yes, here it is, a Dana 30 RCV set with hopefully stock splines, but it's a little rusted to shit. But yeah, it is genuine RCV. Just got the logos on them, along with you know, 7 years of rust. They are not looking too pretty. So I'm going to attempt to clean these up with a wire wheel. We're going to spray these with a coat or two of paint. Make sure that the sealing surfaces are shiny. And yeah, I guess we're going to try and re-grease these and install them, see how it goes. This should be interesting. hoping that even in this condition they're still stronger than stock shafts and U-joints. Yeah, I'd say there's just a little bit of rust on that. What do you think? Good lord. This wire wheel's doing pretty good though. Okay, so now they're all fairly clean. You could almost put them in as is. I mean, they look very nice now. But I got a feeling that they're not going to stay like that, especially with where I live. Rust just shows up everywhere. So we are going to coat these just to try to keep them alive a little longer, and then hopefully the diff fluid inside the diff keeps them clean, or at least non-rusting the rest of the time. I've had really good luck with this self-etching primer. So we're going to use that. It's green, and it's meant to go onto bare metal, and it seems to stick fairly well, better than most like top coats that I've tried. So I'll put that on just on this area. We don't really want to get it on the splines of the sealing surface. Did you say seal? Or? But besides that, we're just going to spray this on, and I think we're going to send it. Okay, I guess I'll put in minimum effort. So they're taped near the sealing surfaces, and we're just going to do this in light coats. 1 to 3. I brought it inside because it's too damn windy out there. So, alright. Go for gold, I guess. Okay, so after 3 light coats, you should get something that looks a bit like that. Beautiful. Alright, that might be a little better. And then with these guys, Jesus fucking Christ! Chill out! So after you're done, it tells you to invert the can and spray just to clean the nozzle off, because you're not supposed to pinhole them. So that way you can use it next time too. Alright, I guess we're going to let this sit half an hour and then put some black on it. Okay, and after 2 beautiful coats of black gloss, I think we're good. Alright, lovely. Now we can take the tape off and let them dry. Okay, so here they are in all their beauty. Now that they're all painted up and pretty and nice to go. So these beefy boochies are looking good. Now then, enough talking. Let's get to the install. So here the beautiful babies lay, awaiting their new home. So there's a couple things that goes into this install. So first off, because of how big these joints are, and especially the protective boot over here, we are going to have to clearance the knuckle. They provide custom bolts for this extra clearance, because the ones that are currently in there are not going to work. So if we get a closer view up into here, you can see that the hub bolts over here, especially that one, see how far that that neck or whatever, the shoulder or whatever it is, the head is sticking out. That's going to be a problem because the boot is a lot wider. So they provide you with bolts that don't have a very wide shoulder. But on top of that, we are also going to have to grind the knuckle. I believe it's about 1/16 of an inch off each bolt thing. So we're going to have to put a flat so that the boot can sit in there. Because if the boot rubs, you're going to have problems. So you got to make sure it has the right clearance. So when you buy a proper kit online, you know, you're going to get the bolts, you're going to get the shafts, you're going to get a clearance gauge so you know that you've, you know, grinded out as much material as you need. You're going to get a nut, and I think they also come with special grease. So it's some kind of moly grease. I have some moly grease inside, so I'm going to just grease them with that. The grease fitting is actually on the tip of the shaft. There you go. So that is a needle grease fitting, so you'll need a needle adapter to be able to shove all the grease in there. And you grease these a couple times a year. You don't want to over grease them, but you know, enough to keep them fresh. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We might have to take the knuckle off and do some grinding, but besides that, the other fun part is that the boot does not fit through the hub opening. So you kind of are supposed to install the boot in the axle, then slide the shaft into it and seat it. Seating it is fun because it's a tight fit, so getting it on and off is kind of a pain in the butt. But anyway, I guess we're going to get this party started. So we're going to put the front axle on jack stands, we're going to take the tires off, we're going to take off, you know, all the brake and hub assembly stuff, and get down to the meat and potatoes of this. So let's go break out some tools. And sure, you can buy the clearance gauge for about $5, but if you got a 3D printer, you can also just make your own. The future is now, folks. Okay, so we got a jack stand on either side, gave it the shake test, and she's looking solid, so let's start tearing tires off. So after that, we have to take the caliper off. So for me, that's going to be 2 hex bolts over here. I think they're 7mm or something like that. So we're going to take that out, take the caliper off. Alright, 7mm, takes the caliper off. So for this side, you rotate the bottom out first, and the top has the notch that holds it in place. And then after that, you can easily get to your brake pads and pull them off. After the brake pads is the rotor, so this will all just scooch right off. Can't do it one-handed. Okay, so now there's a couple more fun parts. So we have to separate the hub from our knuckle. That's always exciting. If you've done the job anytime recently, it should come out. If you haven't touched this before, oh, you're going to have some fun, partner. So we've got these 3 bolts over here. We got 1, 2, and 3 that have to come out, and that will separate the hub. We also have to take the shaft out of the hub, and that one's fun. So make sure you get an impact gun or a really big breaker bar, because they're usually in there pretty tight. So yeah, we're going to take the cotter print out, take that out, zip that bolt, zip all these bolts, and pull everything off. Alright, so once you wiggle the cotter pin out and this little protective cover, then we can get to the big John over here. So usually this is a 36mm, but on mine, that's a little loose. So it might be a 35 for this one. I don't know, but the 36 will still fit and work. Now, this has a torque spec of 175 foot-pounds, okay? And that's when it was clean. So when it's rusty and stuck, it's going to be even worse. So it's on there, tight. Okay, if you are going to use an impact gun of some sort, it's got to be strong, all right? We're talking like Super Skookum. And something that'll help or hinder is extensions and things like this. You can't use a bunch of adapters and extensions and all kinds of shit. Every single linkage that you have weakens the overall power output of the impact, because it's like a hammer. So the more you know, vibrations and looseness that there is, the more energy loss and the less you're putting into the nut itself. So with this, we're talking directly to the gun, no attachments, and it's a tight fit. So again, I might have to hold the socket so it's a little loose, but we'll see if this takes it off on 3. Okay, well that made that look easy. Generally they're on a little harder than that, so maybe that one wasn't on super tight. Fun. Okay. Well, after that you got this little washer that we have to wiggle out, and then that's everything on the axle shaft side. Usually a magnet will take this right out. Fucking pain in the ass, but okay. Now we can focus on the hub bolts. Okay, so these are 1/2 inch 12-point bolts. So you're going to want to make sure you got yourself a nice 1/2 inch breaker bar that you can use to try to break this free, because they're going to be on there kind of tight. Okay, so that's what they look when they came out. Every time I install these, I always put some of that good old silver stuff. Anti-seize. It's the bee's knees, man. Same with the hub bolt. It's same with the entire hub, or unit assembly, whatever the hell you want to call it. She came right out. I just gave her a couple of wiggles, and she's free as could be. So there you go. There's her hub. And here's our shaft. When you take the shaft out, you kind of want to make sure you support the back as it comes out, so that you don't damage your shaft, or so you don't damage your seal. Did you say seal? Look at that greasy motherfrugger. Gross. Okay. So there you go. That's a U-joint and axle shaft removed. So fun fact, RCVs will work with axle tube seals, so you're in luck. Yay. So there you go. That's all the bits come, all the main important stuff out. So now it's really just down to the knuckle clearance. You can see that there's already kind of some flats in there, so we just have to make the flats more flat. Okay, so now we can get up close and personal with them. Check it out, huh? Hopefully that's coming up bright on camera. It's a little hard to see in the sun, but oh man, that is just oof. That is a beauty, son. Beautiful. Very nice. Cool. Okay, so fun part the first. As stated in the instructions, they're not going to fit in through the opening for the hub. That's a no worky zone. So the boot has to come off in order to slide this, or the knuckle. So you know, it depends what we're going to be able to do. So if I can get this boot wiggled off, maybe we'll look into that. But again, let's see if that clearance gauge is done, just so we see how much has to come off the knuckle. Alright, look at that. 1 hour later and 5.4 meters of filament, and we've got ourselves a nice little clearance gauge. Cool. Sweet. Okay, so in case you're curious, the diameter that we need to achieve is 4.125 inches, and that needs to be for a depth of 1/2 inch. So that is kind of our fitment issue here. So as you can see, like if we line these all up pretty evenly, it's a little hard to see that side. So I think they said you have to take about 1/16 of an inch off each side. Don't brighten up at all. It's not a ton, but it is enough to warrant some grinding. So to take the knuckle off, we've got cotter pin and nut, cotter pin and nut, and then we got this aftermarket steering system. So we're gonna have to take that off and slop that all out. So I think it's time to pull some cotter pins and bust some nuts, eh? Alright, so we got the steering off. That's easy because it was just a bolt, just some easy little taps and she comes free. But if you do have the stock TREs, you're gonna have to take off that crap and try hitting on this area to see if it'll free it up, maybe a little heat, you know, lubrication, all that. So now we're on to this. This guy is a 33 millimeter, possibly. It was a decently tight fit, maybe a little loose, so I don't know. Again, whatever. The top one, however, was a 7/8, so that one was easy at least. So both of those are loose. I tried doing some derby D's. So now that the steering's loose, I might have a better chance. There's 2 whacker spots. Got one right here, and I don't know, it kind of looks like this is one over here. So we're just going to try the shock loading method, just kind of beat the crap out of it, see if it doesn't want to let go. You know, somewhere on this area, I should hopefully free it up a little bit. If I can get there without killing myself. Oh, that one looked kind of free. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Okay, honestly, yeah, just a couple more good whacks and she came off pretty easy once that bottom one finally let go. So I dig it. Cool. Alright, let's take this to the workshop. Alright, so anyone that's been following the channel for a while has seen that the my little backroom workshop has been really messy. And part of the reason why videos have been slow is because I've been cleaning the hell out of this place. Oh my god, if you would have seen what this place looked like before. It's still not done, not even close, but oh man, we are making some progress. Got a nice bigger workbench over here for storage and tools and parts. And then we got a proper metal workbench. A nice table, storage, all kinds of stuff like that. Oh man. And a place to mount my brand new big boy vise. Oh yeah. So you probably wouldn't have known unless you were really looking hard, but the table I had before this was that white plastic patio table. it's got like cracks down the side and everything. It was all like UV, you know, cracked and all that kind of crap. So I have no idea how it was supporting half the weight it was. It had a concrete block and a vise and all kinds of other shit on there. I'm surprised it hasn't collapsed by now. But anyway, yeah, I'm getting this place together. Got the new tool chest over here and everything. So we are starting to get places. But anyway, back to our regular scheduled program. So here is the knuckle. And here's the clearance gauge. And that's about what we got to grind off each side. So I think they mentioned somewhere on 1/16 of an inch. You know, it's not a ton, but it's kind of a ton. So yeah, we're gonna go to town with this guy, see what we can do. This should be fun. Okay, so after a lot of grinding later, that's kind of what you end up with. Something a little bit like that. So I'm gonna see if I can smooth that out just a little bit, but take our clearance gauge and, you know, it fits all the way down. 1/2 inch. And you can kind of turn it. So I think I'm going to try and maybe get out a Dremel or something just to like finish off the edges and just kind of make it a little smoother. The problem is I only have 4.5 inch grinding discs. And the hole we need to make is like slightly over 4, so I can't drop the whole thing in there to get a nice even up and down. So it's kind of got more of a taper to it. So you get something that's a little flatter and see if I can just run that down a little bit, finish it off. Okay, so the next step I did was just take a Sharpie and color in everything, and then put the gauge in there and spin it. And then all you do is look for the shiny parts so you can see where it's actually hitting. So for the most part, I did pretty good. See, there's a little bit of a light spot there towards the bottom. That I didn't really color in all the way, but you can see, I mean, for the most part, it's not bad. It's just right where the where it starts to taper down. There's a little bit of a touch, but otherwise not bad. So I think that should just about do it. Alright, so since I didn't buy the fancy RCV grease that goes for like 40 bucks, this is what I got laying around. Extreme Pressure Moly Graphite, multi-purpose. It's that good stuff. Once you go black, you don't go back. So we're gonna just fill it up, and yeah, should be good to go. Drop that in a grease can. Okay, so now our shaft is installed and greased. So in case you're curious, well, you can't really see because there's a little schmool on there. Always keep your tip clean. But anyway, that's a grease needle fitting. This isn't like the stabby kind that you go between the boot. This actually fits nice and flush on the needle fitting. So you just push her hard and give her a couple squirts. Now, since these are dry and have been sitting around for years, I made sure to fill them up nice and good. They say the instructions not to overfill them, but again, I'm just kind of squirt until I feel like I see something going on. So, I don't know, I figure very worse, we'll just drive it a little bit. And then if we need to add more later, we can. Because that's the nice thing is the grease fittings on the tip here. My hubcaps, the center cap thing is going to get in the way, so we can't access it unless we take the tire off, but whatever. Okay, so now we can see why we had to clearance that knuckle out, because you see how big this boot is. So that's going to go through there and slide in under that. Hopefully I can do what I want to do here. We might have to take this out and do the boot and do it properly. I don't know. I was hoping to half-ass it and just kind of throw the knuckle over it, but might not be able to do that. Alright, so yeah, you can't fit the knuckle around there. It's too thick over here to get to the upper part. So the boot has to come off, and you have to do it the right way. So I took a big punch like this and just started hitting on the boot. It's pretty strong, but you don't want to use anything flat. You don't want to cut it up. But yep, we got the boot off, so I guess now I can properly clean that and whatever, make sure everything's all nice and pretty. And we'll put the knuckle back on, and then we'll slop it all in there. Alright, so it's time to put the knuckle back on now. So I've hit all the surfaces with some paint. So I think that they're ready to go. So now we can tighten these up. The bottom nut gets 80 foot-pounds, and the top one gets 75. since I'm using a floating upper ball joint, which most things use, where the thing will actually go up and down, and that's how it's designed to do. You don't have to worry about, you know, tolerances or making sure things are at the right height or whatever. You just tighten this one down, and then you tighten that one down. Pretty simple. Okay, so now our knuckles all bolted up, torqued down, all the cotter pins back in place. So now, the fun part. Get to take our boot and slide it in here, like so. And then we'll take our shaft and slop it on in there. And then the fun part of trying to press fit it in there. They say in the instructions that you can seat this by hand. Use some WD-40 on the ball to try and help that move along. But yeah, they don't suggest hammering on it. They do have an install tool thing that like holds it. It'll fit in here and hold it forward so you can properly pop it in there. But I don't know, we'll see how hard it is. Okay, so here we are next day. Finally got the boot on here, and I'm telling you right now, unless you're like 600 pounds and you've got hydraulic presses for arms, you're not gonna get that boot on by yourself. Holy shit, man. I don't know if it's because the boot is old as hell or what, but there's no way in hell I can just push that in. Having the actual install tool would be kind of helpful, but just, oh my lord. I had to take the hub and bolt the hub on to force everything back, put a little spacer in there and start prying to try to push the boot forward and wiggle it little by little, and you know, you can hear it hissing as it's sucking on there. I think it's fully installed now, but holy shit, man. So when you turn it, you can kind of see what's going on with the ball. But there's a couple issues. The knuckle has clearance, but the bolts do not. So like, for instance, this one's a big one over here. When I turn it the other direction, it hits the boot. So, I don't know, maybe I'll have to grind down the shoulder of that thing too, just so it'll fit properly. But good lord, man, it's a tight fit on a Dana 30. I don't know if the Renix Dana 30 makes a difference, if the knuckle's any different, or the hubs are closer together, or anything like that. I don't think so. But man, it's a tight fit, man. Hopefully this is worth it in the long run. Alright, so I guess the last step before we really just get into reassembly is I just took everything apart. We're going to put some nickel anti-seize on there, on that silver goodness, just to make sure the hub actually comes out next time, because you know they're going to have to come out again sometime. So just a little bit around the edge, just to keep it good. I'm going to do the same for the bolts. We're going to put it all back in, and we're going to tighten it down. For this bolt over here, I ground down the head just a bit more. I'm going to put some nail polish on there just to keep the rust away. Paint or other stuff works well too, but that one's got a little brush on the end. Makes it easy. So, jam it in there and tighten them up. Okay, 75 foot-pounds later, and everyone's all torqued up. Looking good. So there you go, hub is now on. So now we can put on our axle nut. That gets 175 foot-pounds. Oh dear God. And then we can put the brakes back on and wheel. So, you know, that's all the tough stuff. So that's what she looks like when she's finally installed. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Alright, so that's actually not too bad. I just got my little dial in there. This one only goes up to 150, so I just went to the next thing over, and should be close enough. So, last step is to take your little slammy device, some kind of chisel, and hit the nut in there to lock it in place. That's what they use instead of a cotter pin. So you just deform the nut a little bit, and it should stay. Okay, so there you go. That is one side of an RCV shaft basically done. You know, rotor, calipers, pads, all that, steering, it goes back on the way it came off. Then you do it all again on the other side. And just like that, I'd call that done. So yeah, beating that in. The punch I was using was just kind of break it in half, so I used more of a like a flat, like a round punch to try to push that in there. And as for the brakes, if you haven't ever known what this thing's for, this is a pad slide, so it puts tension on the pad to help it slide a little easier. So make sure those little finger thingers are, you know, popped up on that ridge, so that way it actually has something to move on. But yeah, it's pretty much it in a nutshell. Put the tire on, you're done. Okay, well before I do put the tire back on, let's just check final clearance. So you can see over here with this bolt, this is the first one that I had to mess with. And it's hard to get you in the right area. But there is clearance there. That one's fine now. But now, if you look at this one, that one's rubbing pretty good. So when I spin this, like, can't really do that one-handed, but she rubs pretty good. So that's going to be a problem. And even the other one down there, I think, is having a little bit of rubbing issue too. So I don't know. This is not fun. I tell you what, this is not fun. I'm gonna have to grind the other ones down too. Alright, so now that I'm on the second knuckle, I got an interesting idea. To make the process a little easier and to make sure that everything's staying parallel, I figure for most of the work, what we can do is hold the grinder like this, so we can go flat up and down like that to get to, you know, the corners. That way you know it's good all the way down. And then you can come in and finish like this to get more of a rounded edge. Just to get better clearance, but still have more, you know, material left. So that's just kind of my idea. But when you hold it like this, you can get a nice flat thing. You can just hold it there. You don't have to move up and down a billion times. It's easier. You just sit there like that and go to town. And then just finish up by cleaning the other way. So that might make things a little easier. Just a thought. Alright, I think it's time to break in a brand new tool. So I've been dying for a proper torque wrench that could go up to, you know, at least 175, because that's what the axles do. So if you're ever doing axle work, you know, you're working big nuts, you're going to need a big wrench to go with. So this bad boy is a Renix, goes up to 250 foot-pounds, and it's a monster. Because I'm a puny little man. I need a long wrench. So yeah, we're going to see if this does any better than the dial type that I've been using forever. The dial type's cool, but the problem is you have to be able to look at the dial to know what you're at. So, this thing is just a wee bit longer. And goes higher too, because this max is out at 150, so I've been just guessing that hopefully 125 is 175. So yeah, should be fun to try that out. Nice clicky boy. Okay, so just for giggles, I tested both of these out. So I tried this one first, got it up to 80. Then I tried this one, and this one actually spun for an extra, I don't know, I would say 8th turn or something. But I'm going to go with this one being more accurate because it's actually got a certificate in there that tells you the accuracy spec and all that and blah 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 blah. So this one's probably a little stretched and a little worn. So I've been kind of under-torquing things a little bit. Great. But hey, that's why you should always get your stuff calibrated, eh? So, cool. Well, I'm happy with that. So anyway, yeah, bottom one, 80, top one, 75. Then we can start putting this damn thing together. Okay, so now comes the fun part. Putting the fucking boot on. Alright. So, I think I found a much easier way. First off, seriously, installation tool. Holy shit, that helps so much. I just took a piece of, PC computer case, like a tower, and I just cut a slit so that it fit over top of the thing, so it's got something to push against. Way easier than trying to dick around with a bunch of bullshit. Seriously, installation tool. Second, obviously, luber if you love her. And third, I couldn't push it by hand, so this is what I did. I screwed the nut on, I pushed as hard as I could. You could hear some hiss, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting somewhere, and then, stopped. I'm fucking pushing off the side of my car as hard as I can. I'm gonna throw my back out. That ain't gonna work. So, nut screwed on, socket screwed on, hammer screwed on, boop, boop, bop. She's in there, good as raindrop. Drop top. I don't know. So yeah, boots on. So that's a much easier way, especially if you're on the trail, you know, you already got all your freaking tools out. Just beat her a little bit and make sure, you know, she's right. Okay, cool. So now we got to grind down the bolt heads, and we can bolt it all back together. Yay! Okay, so now for the fun part. So we got all the hub bolts in. They're torqued to 75 foot-pounds. So, now torquing the big one. Now that we actually have a proper wrench to use. Yay! Okay, so, fun fact. You probably are going to want to have the other tire on the ground to do this. And the transfer case in 4 low, and the transmission in park. Now, my other tire is floating off the air, but we can fix that in a different way because I have front lockers. So since I have an knee locker, I can just lock the bad boy up. And look at that, our wheel doesn't turn. So now we can get some torque on. Excellent. So, how bad is 175 foot-pounds, you say? Well, let's find out. Click. That's not bad. I like this. This is fun. Man, I barely had to break a sweat. Nice. Okay, cool. Stick that bad boy on and put your brake assembly stuff back on. Yay. Y'all, I am kicking myself right now. I put the fucking dust shield on backwards. Big nut's gotta come off, 3 nuts gotta come off, and all the fucking... Oh, fuck you. Fucking pile of shit. Fuck. Okay, so there you go. Once the tire's bolted on, you're done. So, one thing to notice already, you can see some wonderful scratch marks, and if you look at that top bolt, you see there's a nice little ridge going on there, picking off some of the coating. So I still haven't ground enough off of that bolt for that to work, so that's lovely. And yes, it's the bolt's fault. It's hard to get you in there, but the knuckle is ground down more, so the bolt head still sticks out. So yeah, the bolts that come with the Dana 30 kit don't really do their job all that well. You're gonna have to do some modifications. The passenger side, where I ground them down a little more, they seem to do better. I don't see any rub marks on them. So as long as we can keep the boots in one piece and everything's all happy, I think that's just about everything. So I can't wait to actually try these out on the trail, see how they do, especially when we're, you know, cocked all the way one side or the other. We won't have our tires bouncing up and down anymore. And we shouldn't have to worry about breaking shafts anymore. So cool. Hopefully they're a little smoother on the street. You know, I drove it for the first time in a little while yesterday. It wasn't too bad. So yeah. I don't know. That's pretty much it. There you go. It's RCVs and a Dana 30. So yeah. Now you too can be prepared for taking on slight rocks and inclines without worrying about popping your toothpick Dana 30 U-joints. Yay!